Hello, this is Josh Patel, and today I am bringing you another biology lesson. Today we will be doing Chapter 4, which is Cells and Energy, Lesson 1, which is Chemical Energy and ATP. So our key concept for today is all cells need chemical energy. So chemical energy used for most cell processes is carried by ATP. So molecules in food store chemical energy in their bonds. So the bonds in the chemical food, like glucose, is that they carry energy. So this is an example of a starch molecule, and it shows all the bonds they have which carry energy, and this is glucose, which is each of the little hexagons in the starch molecule. So ATP transfers energy from the breakdown of food molecules to cell function. So basically cells break down ATP, or they break down simple sugars to create ATP, which is essentially energy for the cell. So energy is released when a phosphate group is removed. ADP is changed into ATP when a phosphate group is added. So this is the cycle of ATP, which is adenine triphosphate, so it has three phosphate groups, and ADP is adenosine diphosphate, which means it has two phosphate groups. So they have to add and remove one to switch back and forth between ATP and ADP. So from ATP to ADP, we have to remove a phosphate. And so when a phosphate group is removed, energy is released. And then to go from ADP to ATP, we have to add a phosphate. And by adding a phosphate, we store energy. So we need to know from ATP to ADP, we release energy for cell releases for cell functions. Energy is released. So if we remove a phosphate, we release energy. So remove and remove. Remove one phosphate, release energy. And then ADP to ATP, if we add phosphate, we're adding extra energy into our storage. That's a way you can think about it. So organisms break down carbon-based molecules to produce ATP. So like carbon-based molecules would be like glucose or the starches that they make. Carbohydrates are the molecules most commonly broken down to make ATP, and we learned this in the video about the carbon-based molecules. We learned carbohydrates are quick and fast energy sources for cells, while lipids are like long-term. So they're not stored in large amounts, so they're taken up quickly, and they produce about 36 ATP from one glucose molecule. This is a number you should want to remember, 36 ATP from one glucose molecule. You need to know this. So this is just showing ATP, and this is ADP. It's just showing 3 phosphates and 2. So fats store the most energy, and if we think back, what are fats? They're lipids. So 80% of the energy in your body so it stays for a long time, and it's most of the energy in our body. So we get about 146 ATP from a triglyceride, which is a type of fat, but we don't really need to know this number. Just remember the other number, which was 36 ATP from one glucose molecule. So proteins are least likely to be broken down to make ATP, because they can be used as other things. Amino acids not usually needed for energy, and if we remember, amino acids are what make up protein, so they're not usually needed for energy, but sometimes we might use it. About the same amount of energy as carbohydrates, so amino acids and carbohydrates do about the same, but amino acids can be used to make protein, so our body doesn't really use them that much for energy. We'd rather use carbohydrates or lipids. So this is a chart showing how much energy each molecule creates. Carbohydrates is 4 per milligram, lipids is 9 per milligram, and protein is 4, same as carbs. We don't really need to remember the numbers, just remember lipids have way more energy, while carbohydrates and proteins have about the same, and carbs would rather be used than proteins. So a few types of organisms do not need sunlight and photosynthesis as a source of energy. So most animals, most creatures, plants and animals get their energy from the sun. Like the sun is the base of the pyramid because essentially the sun gives energy to the plants or the producers for the animals to eat, but the animals are still getting their energy from the sun because it's the starting point. If there was no sun, those animals wouldn't get to eat the plants because the plants never got energy from the sun. But some animals never see the sun. They're like all the way down at the bottom of the ocean. So they must get their energy from a different source. So some organisms live in places that light never gets to. In chemosynthesis, chemical energy is used to build carbon-based molecules. So it sounds like photosynthesis, but it's with chemicals, so it's chemical energy. So it's basically the same thing. It's similar to photosynthesis, but they use chemical energy instead of light. So this is an image of a underwater volcano or hot springs, and these just shoot up a bunch of chemical energy or until there's just a bunch of hot dust or hot water they just shoot out, and certain animals use them to collect energy instead of photosynthesis because they can't reach the sunlight. So this was the end of my video for today, which was chapter 4, which was all about cells and energy, lesson 1, which is about chemical energy and ATP. My next video will be on chapter 4, cells and energy, lesson 2, which is a photosynthesis overview. Hopefully you all already know what photosynthesis is, but make sure you still catch the next video because there will be new information that you probably don't know yet. And good luck in your quest in biology.